Hey there, vinyl community. I think we're on here. Yeah, looks like we're on. Sunday afternoon, and had some plans today to do some stuff, but kind of got changed at the last minute, so decided to listen to some music. I had some volume problems on my last video, so I'm trying to be louder, and I've made sure all my volume levels are turned up. So we'll see how this one goes. If it's low volume again, then maybe I'll have to redo this on my phone or something. But I'm not going to feel like redoing it. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, listening to some music today, and kind of wanted to talk about. There's an album that's probably one of the most important, records in my collection to me personally, just because it just turned me on to a lot of different kind of music, and I think in a lot of ways opened the door to what music could be and how much more it could be than just the music that I was being force fed, through radio and through television and normal media outlets in the United States. Um, Today I've been getting into, so I've been trying to do better in my Steve Lacy collection. Got this on right now. It's kind of my latest purchase. Really nice. Has Lacy's wife is doing vocals on it, and normally, jazz vocals are not my thing, but I really, really like this, and the whole thing has a unique beauty to it. Really a really underrated record. Steve Lacy, I say it a lot, I know, and but he deserves credit certainly. I wasn't familiar with Steve Lacy at all. I like jazz, but most of it was American jazz. And from listening to Stunt Rock Infusion's live stream, turned me on to. I don't think he ever. I don't know if he played this or not. Maybe he did, but the first one that I got, I know he played. And this is really good. And these are like solos from a certain portion in his career. There's a part two. From what I understand, the second part it's not supposed to be as good, but I don't know. I haven't listened to it yet, but I like this a lot. And then this one is the one that I really, really love. This is amazing, and it's not that you can still grab it pretty inexpensively. Real nice. So yeah, just listen to some jazz and just thinking about like music that was kind of important. And I know this is a record that's kind of sought after. I hear people talk about it. It's not like it's anything unique. And if I didn't have something, I thought, maybe something different to show about it, I wouldn't even bother. But I mean, we all know the Public Image Limited metal box um, came out in 1980. Um, yeah, it originally came out in this kind of unique tin. This is the top of the tin right here, and then later was reissued um, after this sold out, which I think it did fairly quickly, as a second edition. In the United States, it was called second edition. And then when you heard all these rumors that when it came out as a double album, second edition, that it was remixed, and there are people who swear that it was. I at one time had a kind of beat up copy of second edition, British second edition, and I didn't hear any noticeable differences that would have forced me to keep two versions of the album. I don't listen to this album all that much, and partially that is because I like it so much. I know it well, and there was a time when I went through my phase of listening to it when it was a daily listen for me. But I save it now for when I really need to recapture those those times when I initially found it. Metal box came in a initially came with this little. Mine's a little beat up. Had it for a long time, since college probably. And I bought this used, but at that time it was not unusual to find these around. You could see them. They weren't that. Now they were a little more than, like what you might normally expect to see or something like that, but they weren't particularly high price or anything. And I grabbed mine just for listening, so I wasn't looking for collector's value or anything like that. I just listened to it because I wanted to hear the album. It came out in three 45 EPs, and I can show them to you here. But really, what I wanted to talk about is here's the other here's the other part of the case that it came in, and then each one was kind of separated by these sheets of paper, and that's the discs that are in there. It's pretty cool. Little EP. It's people didn't like it because it was harder to listen to. You had to switch it over, and it was 45 RPM. I would say this about it. I've heard like the CD version of this, and none of them quite capture the sound of Metal Box. That is kind of true. And so, for what it's worth getting for that reason. But really, the real reason to kind of get this record isn't because of the, kind of amazing sound quality or anything like that. It's because of what's in those grooves. I reject the idea of that amazing sound quality makes music, listenable. I've heard sparkling versions of Steely Dan, and it's never going to make me want to listen to one of those records. So, the Metal Box, I think what it did is I can remember seeing Public Image Limited was on. I was just a little boy, really, and I saw him on American Bandstand, and they're lip singing to this track. And I can't remember if they made Lydon, if they made the whole band play, to a tape, or if the band could play live, but they used a tape for his vocal. I don't remember. But I do remember his vocal certainly was not live. And he didn't even pretend to, sing the song. For a few minutes, he held the microphone in his hand, and then he was off into the crowd and just made a complete spectacle of the whole charade of American Bandstand, and their music is the irony of Public Image Limited being on playing this heavy dub, this avant-garde dub heavy track, and on American Bandstand, the charade that Lydon puts on is perfect, and certainly intrigued me as a young kid to the track, and hearing it. The music was unlike anything I had ever heard before. I had heard the Sex Pistols, and while they certainly had their good points or whatever, they were not groundbreaking musically. I don't think in any way. In fact, even as a punk album, it was a pretty clean record. Nothing against it. The tracks were amazing for the time, and just what the world needed at that point, I think. But I'd still rather listen to the Damned's first album over the Nevermind the Bollocks, but that's another story. But with Public Image Limited, Johnny Lydon really kind of went for something very, very different, and showed that his roots in music went a lot deeper than just writing kind of 2-minute punk pop songs or whatever. Public Image Limited was interested in going into areas that a lot of Westerners, or most Westerners, especially back in 1979, 1980, were ready for. And remember, the single Public Image Limited had already come out, and so the world had already, that was about the, the most mainstream, that band was ever going to get was on that track, and it was a great track, and at the time. And but with Metal Box, they decided to go a lot deeper and start to explore, um, music that most of us that were listening to FM radio in the United States were never ever going to get to hear on radio, and did it in such a, you think about it. Here was a guy who really, if he had wanted to sell out, there would have been a moment to just cash in and sell millions of records and take the money and run. He could have done that, and instead, they created something, completely unique, an avant-dub masterpiece, bass heavy. The tracks are driven by this heavy bass, um, um, and with the guitar really kind of augmenting it with these cutting slices of avant-garde guitar playing, and you listen to, that sound that U2, The Edge claims to have invented and everything. Go back and listen to where that sound, kind of really came from, and cutting through the music, and then on top of that, Lydon's, wailing vocal on top of it, and it just should not have worked. This complaining, nasally, that just was perfect, laying over the top of this cutting music. It's a extraordinary record. I've never heard anything like it before or since. And people have tried to, and the song titles are no less, Pop Tones and Careering, No Birds, Albatross, Socialist. Each track challenging, and if anyone's waiting for the pop single to come about, there's nothing like that to be found here. This was an album that was going for something completely different, and I don't know if Virgin Records got what they paid for, but Wobbles, Lydon, Livin, created something that is unlike any other record that you're likely to ever hear, and I don't think it sounds quite as it's not quite the knockout punch today that it would have been, back then, and that's okay. It did its job, but it's still there's still nothing else really like it, and it's not for everyday consumption. These were guys who were legitimately trying to challenge the orthodoxy of Western music, and you don't hear too many people in that age group who are trying to fight their way to the top of stardom, who are willing to take on those kind of punches and challenge music in a way that Metal Box did. And there are better pieces of music, but for me, it accomplished really kind of what it sought out to do, which is, I think, open a lot of people's minds about music that was outside the constraints of the edges of North America or Europe, and start to look at the world in a different way. That it reminds me of like these lists that we see of the top 100 bands of all times, and every single one of them, the Beatles, the Beatles are the greatest band. How could you even consider that the greatest band of all times unless you're considering bands from across the globe? And I know that that's a sacred cow for a lot of people, but I do think there's a certain arrogance about the presumption that we should know who the best guitar players are without any consideration of the other continents around the globe. It's just silly, and it's increasingly silly to say these things. You kind of got away with it in the 60s and the 70s and maybe even into the 80s. But in 2024, to come up with this idea that you might know, that you're talking about these four guys and that they were the pinnacle of music. It's more than silly. It sounds, I don't want to say the word because I don't want to offend anybody, but I think we should look outside the borders and start to consider music from other places. And for me, Public Image Limited, Metal Box was a big part of that. So, I would just say that, hold on a minute. I would just say that, it's a great record if you're not familiar with it. And I can't imagine that there's too many people who this still is something that they haven't heard. If you haven't heard it, it's certainly worth a listen. And I don't want to say that it's something that you need to have in your record collection because it might not be for you. And that's okay. It's worth a listen for sure. And you might get something out of it. I do think that there's some, very special music being played on this. Music that captured a time and a place, even more so than Nevermind the Bullocks. That album might have gotten the attention, but Metal Box kind of did what the Pistols said they were going to try to do, which was to overthrow this orthodoxy. And if you think about it, in many ways the album did accomplish what it set out to do. If you think about the changes that have happened, they forced a lot of people to reconsider music. And I've probably gone on too long about this, and I just wanted to, turn you on to my thoughts about the record. I don't have any expertise in the area of music or playing musical, so it's just my own thoughts on the record and what made it important to me. And I feel like sharing that with you is more important than trying to give some technical analysis about the production qualities or whatever, because I just don't have that kind of expertise. Anyway, thanks vinyl community, and thanks for listening to me rant. And I'm gonna go back to listening to some Steve Lacy. Thanks.